Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 4 of the Alfa Romeo single-seater championship for 2020 for the second half of the year. We're here at COTA once again, here last week, of course, for the touring car action. Now it's time to see what the Tartars can do here at this circuit. Perhaps a bit more accustomed to seeing a single-seater at this racing venue, but it was good fun at COTA in the touring cars nonetheless, so hopefully we'll have some more of that here this evening as well. We're going to head down into turn 12, bit of a contentious point throughout the Formula 1 weekend that we have just seen, so hopefully our drivers can negotiate it. Slightly thinner on the numbers today. We've got 4 cars out on a track, so it might not be the most wall-to-wall action-packed stream that we've had so far, but I'm sure there's going to be plenty of action. You might have seen it while the stream was building up then. There's plenty of side-by-side action going on, even in qualifying between Jack Hodson and Alan Matthews here in this session. Matt Daly was in the mix there as well. Matt Daly currently leading this qualifying session at 207.3, about 3 seconds up on his nearest competition being Alan Matthews. Jack Hodson yet to post a valid lap. He dives into the pits actually. He has set a 2 minute 12.6, but that is yet to be registered by the system, so he's gone and fallen foul of a track limit, which is something, of course, as I say, was very much a hot topic over the weekend. I didn't actually get to watch the racing in America in the Formula 1 Championship because I was busy taking a look at some racing of my own, the BIKC, British Indoor Karting Championship. Not quite at the same level, but you know, certainly good fun nonetheless. I mostly remember it, although I had a bit of a sore head in the morning. Couldn't possibly think why. Either way, Alan Matthews currently doing quite well in this session, though. It must be said he's been very consistent the entire time, so hopefully he can try and, well, I say he's been very consistent. 2 minute 14 on the last lap. I hope there was an outlap because I've just proven myself wrong there, so I do apologise, Alan, if that wasn't quite the case. 2 minute 10.055, his best lap so far. He's got 6 laps under his belt in this session. Matt Daly has 8, who are on board with at the moment as he heads through towards the end of sector 1, heads through turn 8, turn 9 before we have the run into turn 11. Of course, a very different nature of car to what some of these drivers were competing in last week. That front-wheel drive Giulietta is all about trying to nurse those front tyres. You're trying to combat the understeer, and you've got quite a bit of power on tap actually, especially in comparison to these Tartars single-seaters. Of course, powered by that 1.4 multi-air engine, so not quite the utmost in power, around about 200 horsepower, I believe, in this specification. Actually, quite similar to what my road Mito is running at the moment. So things like the slipstream are very beneficial, and just as we saw with the RBs over the Formula 1 weekend, Jack Hodson benefiting from some of that slipstream there. That was from Alan Matthews. He heads into the 12th corner. So interesting to see just how much he was darting across the straights to try and benefit there. So he's clearly decided that this slipstream is going to make a difference. I can see why. There's some higher speed corners here at COTA, as I mentioned last week, and of course the fortnight ago. There's some similarities between this circuit and Silverstone, for example, which has got plenty of those high-speed corners where you really do benefit from a bit of extra downforce. These cars, while light, don't have the biggest contact path with the road in the world. Look at those relatively narrow tyres, but as I say, they are light, so that does help. So you want to make use of that downforce. If you've not got the advantage of like ground effect or very fancy barge boards or that sort of thing that you would expect in a Formula 1 or Formula 2 car. These are Formula 4 bases that are a bit more simple in their aerodynamics. It's a lot more simple to set up in that kind of sense because you've got the big barn door rear wing on the back. You have it very steeply rigged if you want to have a lot of downforce, or you have it pretty much non-existent and have it very slim if you want to have a bit less downforce. There's a lot less to setting up one of these cars, although it is still complicated, as Jack Hodson finds out there, rides over the curb on the exit of the first corner. 130th that elevation change, by the way. A very impressive feat of track engineering and racecraft as well, if you're able to perform an overtake heading into that corner, because it is so technical. But yes, these cars are very simple in their nature. If they've got a slipstream and they've got a little bit less drag, they're going to go quick, but they can quite quickly fall foul of having a bit of drag on the back of them with that big rear wing. So, especially with a 1.4 engine as well. So these drivers are going to have to be careful in how they negotiate their setup. Do they go for that bit of extra downforce and have the higher grip through the corners, but then suffer through the straight? And do they try and kind of bank on the fact that they're going to have some slipstream. Well, this evening we're not going to have much slipstream at all because we've only got 4 cars out on track. Alan Matthews has had a bit of a disaster on this lap. He damages his rear wings quite heavily. 2 minutes to go on the clock. He's not going to get another fast lap attempt. And that is Alan Matthews done in this session. Now, he's also Matt Daly done in this session as well. Steve Knight's 212.8, his best, so nipping at the heels of Alan Matthews. But really, all our eyes are focused on Jack Hodson. What can he do in this session? Well, he's gone purple. Sorry, he hasn't got purple. He's gone green personal best for the first sector. The second sector is a bit of a letdown for him. He's dropped a little bit of time there. So what can he do through the final sector? Let's wait and see. All the drivers in this session on the medium compound of tyre. This car does like to work its tyres quite hard. They're quite small tyres, as I just said, that it will work them fairly hard. And of course, it's a very energy-dense circuit in terms of all the high-speed corners as well. It's going to really take some life out the tyres. So I suspect in the race, we could be even seeing the hard compounder tyre. But let's see now as we head through turn 19. 1 corner to go on the lap for Jack Hodson. What will it be? Will he improve? Will he start to nip at the heels of Alan Matthews? Let's see as he goes wide open on the throttle to come across the line in just a moment. He crosses the line and it is a 2:11.12. It's not quite enough to match the likes of Alan Matthews, but it is, however, quicker than Steve Knight. Although the system does not appear to have registered that lap. I didn't catch any track limits violations myself, but he could well have had some. We'll just have to see how it looks at the start of the lap. Sorry, start of the race as we head towards race 1. Now Steve Knight here heading towards the end of the sort of back straight, the end of the first DRS detection zone as he heads through turn 11 and on to the throttle for the long run down to turn 12. Here we're going to try and go on board inside the cockpit of Steve Knight's car here to see just what type of lap he is able to post, or sorry, what type of speed he's able to get as we go on board with Steve Knight now heading under the advertising banner and running into that 12th corner. It's 140-ish miles an hour we're seeing from this car as he heads into the 12th corner there. A bit of a back end slide out there that is going to cost him in terms of time as he runs through turn 13 and 14. 14 backing itself almost towards turn 12 before you dart left to turn 15 in just a second. The checkered flag has dropped on this session. Matt Daly's already out on track and posting a lap by looks of things, although surely that is only an out lap. So as we head around long sweeping turn 16, technically his apex is for 17 and 18, but I just consider it one corner in anything that has any modicum of cornering ability really as we dart into turn 19 now. Back on to the throttle for one last corner of this lap. Can Steve Knight improve his last lap at 2:14.3? Let's see what he can do as he darts over the curb. That must ruin the lap, surely. The back end had already stepped out at him, and it does. It's a 2:13.7. No improvement to be found there for Steve. An unfortunate end to the lap for him there, but that does bring an end to this qualifying session as well. It's Matt Daly on pole, Alan Matthews P2, Steve Knight and Jack Hodson on the second row of the grid. We'll catch you in a few minutes as we get ready for race 1 here at COTA. Well, here we are on the grid, ready for race one here at COTA. Just over 30 seconds now until lights out. I believe Steve might have a couple of issues getting into the sessions. Hopefully he is able to get underway so we get ready to get onto the grid and, well, clear off the grid in just a second and enjoy some racing. Steve is able to get on, I'm pleased to report. So we've got 4 cars ready to go here at COTA. Let's see now, less than 15 seconds to go. Just to recap, it's Matt Daly and Alan Matthews on the front row. Then we have Jack Hodson and Steve Knight on the second there. After what was a pretty intense qualifying in terms of battling, at least. We saw quite a lot of that midway through the session. But now we've got 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are not quite away, but we're away now for 25 minutes of racing. That was a very long holdout on the getaway there, but it's Alan Matthews trying his best to catch up to Matt Daly. Unfortunately, he isn't able to. It was a decent enough launch for Matt Daly, though Alan did make some ground. I believe Steve Knight has had further issues, unfortunately, which sees him out of the session and in the pit, but it's Matt Daly who's breaking away from Alan Matthews now, and instead Jack Hodson's going to try and find a way past Alan Matthews in just a second. We're coming towards the end of Sector 1 already. Let's see what those two squabbling for second position can go. This does make it fairly easy, though, in terms of the podium, because it doesn't matter where you finish, everyone's going to end up on the podium, as we see these 2 cars now heading down towards turn 8 to turn 9 in just a moment. That small run downhill, one of the lower elevation parts of the entire circuit. And that is a big issue for Jack Hodson, who's not sure what's caused him to stop there, but he's ended up on the exit of turn 9 in a barrier. That is a great shame for Jack Hodson. Steve Knight able to rejoin there as we have Jack Hodson out of the fight, really. Now it's just going to be an out-and-out battle between Matt Daly and Alan Matthews. I suspect this battle could come down to who has the better slipstream, who's got the more efficient car in the high speeds, and that is Alan Matthews' best hope at this point to try and catch up to Matt Daly, who's already built a 2-second lead out front. Now, I'm quite surprised to see that these drivers are still going for the medium compound of tyre. If I think back a few seasons ago, the medium tyre, I can't remember what car it was, I think it might have been the FA01 Tartus that we're currently enjoying. The medium tyre just seemed to be the tyre to go for it. It's soft, didn't have the longevity in qualifying at some circuits, and also obviously was not really useful as a race tyre. And the harder tyre just wasn't really, it had the endurance, but it just wasn't quick enough. And the medium seemed to have the endurance and also have the grip as well. That could be my memory failing me there, but I wouldn't be shocked. A lot has happened in the past few years, really. Plenty of racing action, but I might be thinking correctly. I can't remember. Either way, the medium compound tyre is the choice for these drivers as they come towards the end of lap 1. Clearly, they've decided they will make it towards the end of the race. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, 1.6 seconds behind, so he has gained as we come towards the end of the first lap. We're going to head into this first corner now. A big lockup for Alan Matthews. Sorry, for Matt Daly. He doesn't want to do that too often, does Matt, because he's going to slowly start to wear out his tyres. His tyres are going to become less circular. Going to have a bit of a flat spot, and then it's going to be uncomfortable with real-life racing, which obviously no issues here. But also, as you go to stamp on the brakes again, the car's going to naturally want to go towards that flat spot on the tyre, and it's only going to increase, and it's only going to make the car less likely to want to slow down, and it's just a self-perpetuating problem, really, as the car loses grip, it slides more, it locks up more, that causes more lock up. It's not a situation you want to be in, so Matt Daly ought to try and avoid that if he can. He has built up a gap, though, to Alan Matthews, now 2.3 seconds as we head towards the end of Sector 1, once again, turn 11 to negotiate again as the brake discs go red hot there on Alan Matthews' car. 2-minute 10-second lap, so he's matching his qualifying pace is Alan Matthews. Jack Hodson, I'm sure, very disappointed to see that he wasn't quite able to bring himself into this battle, because I think he would have been in the mix, really, if he'd played his cards right on lap 1. Unfortunately, it just wasn't to be. Matt Daly as well, I should mention, in terms of pace, very good, very strong here as well, 2:08.6. As he leads this race, continuing to build that gap with a purple Sector 2 there. I'm sure we're going to be seeing a few more of them in this race. Now let's have a quick look at the championship as we're a few minutes into this race now. And Colin Knief not here this evening. He had those, in case you missed, in case you watched the touring car round from last week, in case you missed it as well, of course. He did have a few issues relating to his pedals. He had a great qualifying and looked like he was going to be quite strong in the races as well. Unfortunately, his throttle pedal just gave up the ghost effectively. He wasn't able to go full throttle. I think it was a pedal issue on the whole, which I can relate to, unfortunately, this week. That just meant that he wasn't able to keep the pedals down all the way, and the car just wasn't accelerating to its fullest, and he had to basically spend time on the lap repairing that, trying to nurse the car home, and it ruined his race, unfortunately, for him. So he's missing this week as well as a result of that, although I do believe he should be back sooner rather than later with some working sim racing gear, which is what we like to see. So he will lose his championship lead, or his championship lead will shrink easily by virtue of him not being here. It's 136 points to his name, and next we have the man we're on board with at the moment in P2 with 99 points to his name. So things go well, he's going to at least score a podium, you'd expect. That means he's going to gain a substantial number of points. At least 15 points should be going his way, and then of course he does that again in race 2. We'll see another 15 points going his way, so we're expecting Matt Daly to overtake Colin in the championship standings. Then we have Jack Hodson P3 in the standings at the moment. He is on 66 points. Again, he shouldn't overtake Matt Daly, but he should make up substantial ground. Likewise, Alan Matthews in this session as well. This will be an important race then for Alan Matthews. 56 points to his name in P4, so 10 points down on Jack Hodson. We could see a change here, and as it stands, Alan Matthews will be shrinking that gap. Then we have P5 Will Inglis, 56 points, matching Alan Matthews, so Alan will be breaking away from Will there. Then we have Paul Millman, P6, 47, Alex Smith, P7, 38, P8, Steve Knight, 32, and then Paul Brady, P9, with 26 points to his name. Bit of understeer creeping into Matt Daly's car there. 19 minutes of this race to go. I am not entirely sure if medium tyre is going to be at its happiest later on, but we shall see. And that is our championship standings as well, as Matt Daly now finds himself 6.4 seconds ahead of Alan Matthews. The lap time still looking quite good here, although perhaps not his absolute best. I'm just going to be an armchair critically in this race. We won't have the out-and-out racing action in this stream, so what I'm just going to do is just going to criticise everyone. Clearly, though, still doing a very nice job is Matt Daly, as we alluded to in the previous week's race. It is not an easy venue, is COTA. It is very technical. I believe it's a bit of a favourite of drivers who visit this quite frequently, the likes of Formula 1 drivers, I believe. It's one of those laps where, one of those tracks, sorry, where it might not have everything to make a brilliant race in terms of wall-to-wall action, but on a one lap, it's one of those tracks where it just tests all your abilities as a driver. So it is an impressive feat to see our drivers still negotiating nonetheless. Although Matt Daly has lost more time still. That gap was very quickly closed down from 6 seconds down to 3. So let's see if Alan Matthews does have something up his sleeve just yet. Here we are, bit of a closed gap now. I hope Matt Daly hasn't been listening and this is artificial. That'd be a terrible shame. But now we find our gap is only half a second as we head into this first corner. First corner clash, a decider of many a race here at COTA, but thankfully we haven't had that just yet. Make that 0.2 of a second now. I'm starting to wonder if Matt Daly is having issues in his car, because this gap is getting really too close for comfort. Surely he doesn't want to throw away a win like this. Heads through that first sector now, turn 6 coming up in just a moment. He can take too much of the curb out here and it will spit the car off. Luckily, no sight of that just yet, but let's see what Matt Daly can do now. Perhaps he's been preserving some fuel. Might have noticed his fuel load is getting a little bit low as we run through turn 10 and down the hill towards turn 11. This is when Alan Matthews can make or break his race here, as we see Matt Daly on the defensive, covers that inside line. What does Alan Matthews do? He looks like he goes slightly wider, misses the apex, but most importantly, he's going to have that good run through turn 11 and is going to have the slipstream as we head down towards turn 12 here. And that slipstream working well for Alan Matthews as they go side by side. It looks like Matt Daly's nose just about in front, but now he can cover the inside line as well. Alan Matthews is going to get very creative on the brakes. He has a look around the outside, does go late on the initial entry, but goes too wide through the corner, concedes the corner, has to back out, and it's Matt Daly still running ahead in this battle, still running ahead in this race as well. But it's only half a second between these two as we now head through turn 15 in just a moment, before we have that long sweeping right-hander, with Alan Matthews still looking to try and find a way past. Now, usually in a wider, higher speed car, you wouldn't really expect this to be much of an overtaking zone because you fall foul of track limits on the exit of what is turn 18. However, slightly narrower car, lower speeds might open more opportunities up to you. This is a very wide circuit, very narrow cars. You could theoretically get 4 or 5 wide through some of these corners before they do truncate down through the likes of turn 20. And we head back onto the start-finish straight once again. Half a second, still that margin between Alan Matthews and Matt Daly. That last lap, a 2-minute 10.8 for Matt, a 2-minute 9.8 for Alan Matthews. So a decent advantage there to Alan Matthews as he has a look potentially up the inside. No, it's way too far back for anything like that. Instead, Matt Daly covers the inside of the corner off, and Alan Matthews has to think again. Here we go, a battle for the lead is what we like to see. Well, that's what we would have liked to have seen. But that's quite a wounded Tartas FA04. What a terrible shame for Alan Matthews there, really pushing on to try and get ahead of Matt Daly. But instead, look at the damage on his car now. Barreling into the wall there through Sector 1, which seems to be a bit of a bugbear for some of our drivers this evening. And that is a very damaged car there. The rear wing at a pretty unfortunate angle. That is going to be lacking in downforce. Oh, look at the suspension damage as well, as you see him trying to navigate through turn 11. This car is going to be a tricky beast for the rest of this race, as you look at how much steering lock is going in just to keep the car pointing straight. I do not envy Alan Matthews who try and drive that car. Not only is the suspension absolutely cream crackered, also the front and rear wing are going to be offering no downforce, going to be offering, and when they do offer it, it will be inconsistent at best. This car will be so unpredictable. It's just a case of him trying to nurse it home now to score a few extra points. Unfortunately for Alan Matthews, his battle for the lead is no longer looking likely. Instead, it's going to be Matt Daly leading by 13 seconds for at least a little while longer, unless we have anything else happening in Sector 1. Over halfway race distance now. Let's jump into the cockpit of Matt Daly's car there. The car's squirming about ever so slightly. He takes a bit too much curb potentially. Let's see though, as he does navigate turns 7 and 8, and we jump aboard inside the cockpit of the car. Here we go, let's go for, oh, bit of back end stepping out there. The tyres potentially wanting to give up, or just too early on the throttle as he revs out that 1.4 multi-air engine, before we headed out into turn 11. Now, those of you who own a Giulietta Sportiva or something with the 1.4 170 engine or a Mito Quadrifoglio will be very much aware of this car's well, let's just say it doesn't really like to be revved out like this in a road car. So some of the differences between a race car and a road car, obviously the road car's got gearing which is much more aimed towards efficiency and economy as well as comfort as well. Although the Mito QV, a relatively short box, maybe not for some hot hatchbacks, but if you compare it to your more kind of comfort-oriented car, even with a 6-speed manual, it revs to around about 3,000, 3,100 RPM at 70 miles an hour. So all those gears are quite short, but I suspect even shorter in this Tartus FA01, or probably around about the same length. I believe the top speed of these cars is about 150, which matches what a Mito QV in slightly breathed on form can achieve, allegedly. As we have Jack Hodson having another issue out on track, actually. Let's see where it's gone wrong for him. I can tell you where it is. On the exit of turn 8 and turn 9, once again, he's able to get back underway, but another visit to the gravel for Jack Hodson. That is not ideal. We will stay on board with Matt Daly for this lap, though. So yeah, these cars probably hit about 150 because they like to be revved out a little bit more than you. Oh, the back end getting very unsettled there for Matt Daly. Good catch though. Usually, short wheelbase car like this with a racing car single-seater steering rack doesn't usually mean, especially with downforce in play as well, doesn't usually mean that the car is that easy to catch. This car, the centre of rotation, I believe it's called, I'm probably completely making that up, is very different to a traditional road car. The car's more likely to want to turn on its on its centre axis almost, instead of turn with the front end. And that means that the car isn't often that easy to catch in a slide. So it's nice to see Matt Daly there with a great catch as he heads down towards turn 11 once again. We see the revs building up there in this engine, which in road car form isn't well known for its peak reviness. There are certain things you can do to relieve certain tunes, might help with that as well, with differences to the exhaust manifold, and a big thing I think is hybrid turbos and different ECU maps trick the multi-air unit into letting you rev out higher, which the engine will do on its factory internals. It's quite pleased to do that. You see the likes of multi-air tuning developments, of course, over in Europe. We've got versions of this engine that aren't that breathed on, revving well above 7,000 RPM, if not more. So it's a capable engine, is this 1.4 multi-air, and it just goes to show its versatility. Usually in a road car, it's the mid-range grunts is what this engine's all about. That isn't usually what you'd like to see in a race car, but it does have its benefits. There are certain corners, the medium speed corners, some of the lower speed stuff as well, really benefit from the hit of torque that this 1.4 massively turbocharged engine can deliver. I mean, the boost numbers that this 1.4 engine produces for a factory unit is quite impressive. I remember a friend of mine had an equivalent German hatchback named after a leisurely sport with the letters GTI after it, with a 2-litre turbocharged engine, produced the same figure of torque as the 1.4 multi-air. So it was quite an impressive engine, quite an impressive unit, and we've seen it used to its fullest here as we head to the end of this onboard lap with Matt Daly, and that last lap was a 209.5. So despite some of the sliding there, the car really looking less than settled heading through some of these corners now. He is still posting relatively competitive lap times and is still the fastest car out on track. Just this car is entered a phase of this race now where it's looking a little bit less raceable. 7 minutes to go, and I think it's a question of trying to nurse this car home now. Further issues there for Jack Hodson. Not been a an enjoyable race, I would say, for Jack, really, as he heads through turn 15. It's just, as I said, with Matt Daly, a case of nursing the car home at this point. We've got very few cars out on track, and it's just a case of trying to maintain a position to try and gain that point advantage in the championship. This is what this round is going to be all about. It's going to be about trying to make headways in the championship, gaining that few extra points and pushing on towards a higher step later on in the season in terms of championship standings. Rounds like this do bring everything back into perspective. It will bring a few more drivers back into contention. You know, we saw Colin Cleave with a fairly sizable, nearly 2 race victory lead. You know, he nearly had 50 points advantage over Matt Daly, but Matt's been able to bring that right back into his favour now. So an important round for the championship, even if it hasn't been important in terms of the racing action we've seen. It will play out in terms of the championship, and it will be important on that front at least. We're going to go back and forth with Matt Daly. Let's see how he negotiates turn 1 once again, or perhaps not. Let's see how he negotiates turn 2 instead. Look at that, nice and easy. Before we have a slight elevation change. Plenty of elevation changes on this circuit, actually, as we head towards the final 5 minutes of this race. Oh, another issue for Jack Hodson there. I think it's front wing. Yeah, look at the state of that. That is less than, I'm not sure that would pass an MOT. Well, anyway, but, you know, figuratively speaking, of course, as he is about to get lapped actually by Matt Daly. So moves out of the way very courteously there, which is what we like to see. We have that front wing not looking at all happy, which does not help in any way, shape or form. Again, it's a compounding issue. It's just like locking the front tyres. It is a case of you lack downforce, tyres work harder, tyres get hotter, you lose grip, you start to understeer more, then the tyres get hotter. That front wing is going to be things unpredictable, as we've seen for Jack Hodson as well. It is not an ideal situation. Look at the suspension of his car as well, just like Alan Matthews, who is putting in an absolute drive to bring his knackered car home. Alan Matthews is doing the same. Alan Matthews, Jack Hodson doing the same thing in terms of just negotiating a very unhappy car. Steve Knight's car seems to be in a little bit better condition, so a bit of a race of attrition for him, which is what we like to see. Hopefully he can build on that and start to push on a bit more in race 2. But yeah, Jack Hodson, an unhappy car there as the momentum just kind of swings around unexpectedly really for him. The car it doesn't seem to be in control of its weight really at all. I imagine that was only a gentle dab on the brakes. It's just upset entirely this short wheelbase car, as he is able to get back underway, and I am sure he is very much looking forward to the end of this race, given the state of his car. I imagine Alan Matthews in the same boat. Matt Daly has had a few near misses. The car has not looked entirely comfortable out on track, it must be said, although he's still sub 210. So I think it'll be a bit of a reset as we get ready for the reverse grid race coming up in a few minutes' time. Further issues for Jack Hodson there. He was able to get back underway. I'd like to point out as well, too, if the drivers currently participating in this race do end up watching back, I'm not intentionally swapping the camera over immediately to you to have a look at you having a crash. It's just the auto camera system is finding some action out on track and deciding, yes, let's have a look at the unfortunate spin there. So don't blame me. I promise it's not intentional. 2 minutes to go in this race. It's still Matt Daly leading, Alan Matthews P2, Jack Hodson P3. Those two really trying to bring the cars home as best they can. And then Steve Knight in P4 as well. on board at the moment with Steve Knight. The 2-minute 12.9 on the last lap is his best lap, so progressing nicely through this session. Maybe see a bit more of him in race 2, and qualifying was already, it was the closest gap between two cars out in this session. I believe actually Jack Hudson did post a 2-minute 11 or 13, can't remember which one to be honest. So he was in the mix there in the end, just the system didn't register him. As we are now on the penultimate lap of this race, so we have Matt Daly heading through into sector 3 now, and that will be for the second to last time in this race, as we see a bit of understeer creeping in for Matt. Now we'll jump on board with him for a final lap as he gets ready to cross the line towards the end of this race. Steve Knight, though, I say, progressing nicely through the session. 2-minute 13.1 that last lap, so a bit of consistency coming in, as well as we have Matt Daly heading towards the end of the lap. And then we've got Jack Hodson and Alan Matthews, who have been participating in the Demolition Derby, seeing just how much the chassis of their Tartars can take, really. And the mechanics are going to have to work very hard in the sub 5-minute interval between race 1 and race 2. So let's see what condition the cars will be in as we head into race 2. But we're going to go on board with Alan Matthews for a quick look, because we're actually going to go on board with Matt Daly as he heads up into turn 1 for one last time in this race. Not a blockbuster race by any means, but still an important one nonetheless, as Alan Matthews did everything that he needed. I'm going to keep doing that. I've done that so many times in my short AROC commentary career, and I'm going to continue to do that as we have Alan Matthews. I've just done it again. Matt Daly. It's Matt Daly we're on board with, I promise, as we head towards the end of Sector 1. As we have him heading into his final lap of this race. Hasn't put a foot wrong, really, has Matt Daly. A couple of moments where the cars looked a little bit unsettled, but other than that, nothing really major to report for Matt. Decent lap in qualifying and a strong showing in race 1 as well. Occasionally looked like it could be under threat. That threat, unfortunately, being quashed, though, for Alan Matthews there, as an unfortunate incident saw him in the barrier and no longer able to fight Matt Daly. I think then we could be seeing the medium tyres again in race 2, as they certainly have dropped off by the looks of things. The times have slowly crept up. They are certainly manageable and might have their benefit earlier on in the race as well. Jack Hodson has had another issue at the end of turn 8 and turn 9. It'll be interesting to hear the driver's thoughts on the end of Sector 1 there to see what is going on at that part of the lap. Has caught a couple of drivers out now as we head through turn 14 and turn 15. Before we jump back on the throttle once again. Revving up to around about 6,200 for the upshift there. Going a little bit higher as we head towards the last corner on this lap. And for one last time in this race, start to finish, Matt Daly has led, and he will continue on with an impressive form in this season as he crosses the line to take the race 1 victory. A decent lap there at the end as well, as 2:09.4. A good lap for Matt Daly to end what has been a good race. It really has nothing really major to report, as we have some victory donuts to celebrate there. So we'll enjoy the victory donuts in the 50-second delta between P1 and P2, as it is easy pickings for Matt Daly here in race 1. It's good to see some victory donuts as well. Yep, just in case those tyres weren't already finished off enough at the end of this race, Matt Daly has seen to it that they are completely well and truly done now, as we are going to go on board with Alan Matthews, who is heading around that final corner. Actually has some company. Jack Hodson not too far behind at all. That very wounded car crosses the line P2, and then we're going to have Jack Hodson coming home as well, rounding out the podium in P3. The final 3 actually relatively close together, all things considered, because they all had their own issues within the race. Let's see, as Matt Daly really putting in the effort to finish off those tyres. An impressive burnout there, as we have Steve Knight crossing the line to take the race 1. P4 in the end there for Steve Knight. And that rounds out our running for race 1. We'll catch you in a few minutes after we finish with a burnout here from Matt Daly, as we get ready for race 2, the reverse grid race here at COTA. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, back on the grid, ready for race 2 here at COTA. Round 4 will be coming to its end after this race. It is Steve Knight and Jack Hodson on the front row. Then we have Alan Matthews and Matt Daly on the back row. A complete grid reversal as our drivers get ready to go racing once again. That run up 130 feet elevation climb into that first corner. Tricky braking zones to negotiate and many an interesting race start here. But we do have 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away for race 2 here at COTA. A good start there for Jack Hodson and Steve Knight. An even better start for Alan Matthews. Once again, he's absolutely nailed the launch. Goes around the outside of Steve Knight up into P2 for Alan Matthews here. Steve Knight loses out in that run up to the first corner and is down into P4 already, but it's going to be a battle between Jack Hodson and Alan Matthews as we head through the first lap. Now taking a tighter line goes Alan Matthews, but there is Matt Daly fancying his chances, backs out of it though. That would have been very brave indeed. Could have ended nastily. We're going to go all of the field heading through the to 5th corner now. It's still Jack Hodson in the lead, Alan Matthews in P2. Then we have Matt Daly, who's got ahead of Steve Knight, but Steve Knight very much still in the mix here and trying to stick a nose in when he can. And then we've got Matt Daly, who is, I'm sure, eagerly awaiting another race lead at some point. Alan Matthews having an issue at turn 8 and turn 9, where we've seen so many issues already. And once again, unfortunately for Alan, it is bitter disappointment and not the way he wanted to start his race, I am sure of it. That makes things a little bit easier for Jack Hodson though, although not that much. I suspect Jack was hoping he was going to be able to use Alan Matthews as a bit of a defence against Matt Daly. Those two, of course, know how to battle each other quite well, and Jack, I'm sure, was hoping that they were going to get caught up in their battling, and it allowed him to break away down the back straight that we're on at the moment. However, it's Matt Daly in that slipstream of Jack Hodson, and Matt Daly doing his best to patch up, close up on Jack Hodson, and he is closing up as we head into the 12th corner there. Goes late on the brakes. The gap is now down to 0.6 of a second. Steve Knight still running in P3 at the moment, but being hunted down by Alan Matthews, who had those issues earlier on. Doesn't look like he's got any aerodynamic damage from the car. It's just going to be damage to his pride and damage potentially to some of the tyres as well. He just needs to nurse those tyres into a comfortable zone once again, make sure they're at a decent temperature, and the car should be good to continue on racing at a decent lick of pace. We go on board though with Jack Hodson, who has Matt Daly behind him. He's going to get a decent lick of pace as we head down through turn 19 here. Having a look around the outside is Matt Daly. Taking a tighter defensive line is Jack Hodson. In that slipstream, still Matt Daly tries to find a way past. I suspect it's going to be the first corner, the next attempt from the car in yellow. Let's see as we run onto the next lap now. Taking a very defensive line there is Jack Hodson. He's going to be playing his cards not very close to his chest here, I suspect, as Matt is going to go for this switch back. He does go for that switch back, has the inside of the first corner on exit. That gives him the outside for turn 2, and then we have the S's coming up in just a moment, where it's anyone's guess really, as we see Matt Daly weaving to try and find a way past turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, sorry, it's turn 3, turn 4 and turn 5. Got my order slightly mixed up there, as it's 2/10 separating the two cars leading this race at the moment. Running down into turn 8 in just a moment's time there, where it's gone so wrong for so many a driver. I suspect a bit of a dodgy curb there could be what causes that. Jack Hodson holding on to the lead of this race for dear life. Didn't quite have the pace in qualifying, wasn't able to show it in race 1 with the instance that he had earlier on. That meant that car was just not happy, and now he's showing what he can do. And what he can do is keep Matt Daly at bay for as long as possible here, as they weave ever so slightly, darting across the circuit, trying to break that toe, but they're not going to be able to break the toe. Instead, they're just going to slow each other down, heading down the back straight like this. There we see Matt Daly gets a nose out in front. Who goes later on the brakes? It's going to be Jack Hodson with the inside line here. That could be advantageous as long as he doesn't go too deep into the corner, but holding him off is Jack Hodson there. A bit of a dupe there from Jack Hodson. Just goes quite late into the corner, and that makes Matt Daly think, I'm going to get ran off here. He doesn't get ran off, but goes off himself anyway, but somehow still keeps the pace up, briefly takes the lead back on the exit of turn 13 and 14, but now finds himself as we head through turn 15, back in P2 once again, and all this battling is slowing the pack up. We still have all 4 cars separated by 2 seconds here in this race. This is the racing action we wanted to see, and this just goes to show the merits of the reverse grid race here. As we run now through turn 19, there is Alan Matthews in the background, Steve Knight slightly further ahead, and then we have the two front runners here separated by just half a second. Steve Knight, the back end stepping out. That is a bit of a commentator's curse there. I was going to say how well it's going for Steve in this race. Unfortunately, that curb, which you saw affecting him in qualifying, still hasn't quite ironed out a few issues there in the racing as well, and that we see Steve now dropping back into P4. Unfortunately, it's still, though, Jack Hodson versus Matt Daly for the lead, with Jack Hodson out in front. Alan Matthews there in waiting, only a second down after all this said and done. Despite his earlier issues, Matt Daly goes very aggressive as we head through turn 3, gives him the apex. He backs out of it, though, because he very nearly makes contact with Jack Hodson in the lead of the race. And then we're going to have turn 8 coming up in just a moment. First, though, it's turn 7 to negotiate. Out goes Matt Daly. Just keeps a bit more pace on the outside there and is able to swoop on past for the lead of this race. Matt Daly, my hat goes off to you, sir. A great move there. Congratulations to both drivers. A fantastic battle so far, and I'm not sure that this is quite over yet. Let's see as we run through turn 10. The braking zone between the left-hander coming up in just a moment. 7/10 of a second already, so perhaps that gap building up ever so slightly, but it will be Jack Hodson with the slipstream coming up in just a moment now. So he's going to be able to close that gap right down, and he is. 7/10 of a second, make that 3/10 of a second, make that 2/10 of a second in just a moment. As we have Matt Daly's car forcing its way through the air for Jack Hodson. That makes it a bit easier for Jack as he follows Matt's every line through turn 12 here. Doesn't want to try any bold moves, and perhaps that is best because behind him he's got Alan Matthews, who's very close behind indeed. Not only that, he's just gone purple through sector 1, has Alan Matthews, so he's got a bit of pace in the car despite that earlier incident. He's been able to look after it well and is still very much in fighting form. This is going to be a great battle for the lead of this race between the top 3 here as we head through turn 15 in just a moment. Make that turn 16, 17 and 18 coming up through quick succession now, with Matt Daly half a second in the lead so far. Jack Hodson P2 and Alan Matthews in P3 as we head through the left-hander here. Taking a slightly wider line is Alan Matthews, carrying a bit more speed through the corner. That might cost him in terms of his tyre life, but could be what he needs to try and close up this leading duo for the fight for the lead of this race here. Now, good run through that final corner for Jack Hodson as he goes side by side with Matt Daly. Has got a nose out in front, but could have the inside line here. The corner opens up so wide, it really is anyone's guess. A great addition to the circuit, I think, is turn 1. And it is now Jack Hodson in the lead of this race by taking that inside line here. He's able to close off Matt Daly and now finds himself in the lead of race 2. Not only that, Alan Matthews works his way up through turn 2 and turn 3. No one expected that, I don't think. He was close, but I didn't think he was that close. Now it's Alan Matthews in P2, and Matt Daly, who was looking surefire to try and walk away with it here in race 2, now finds himself all the way down in P3. The tables really have turned here for our front runners in this race. Now Matt Daly, perhaps for the first time in the whole weekend, finds himself looking slightly less comfortable as it's 4/10 between the two drivers as we run into turn 11 once again, but with the order completely reversed. Now our two closest competitors in this pack really are Alan Matthews and Matt Daly. This could bode quite well for Jack Hodson here, as Jack can perhaps breathe a bit of a sigh of relief, because Alan Matthews is going to be focused more on what is going on behind him with that yellow car trying to hunt him down. So he's going to have to go defensive here, especially with Matt Daly trying moves like that into turn 12. He just about saw a gap. He snipped the gap out. It wasn't quite able to make move stick, unfortunately. And it is still P3 for Matt Daly. Alan Matthews in P2 at the moment, half a second now between Alan Matthews and Jack Hodson. So these three still keeping each other very much in check as we head through turn 15 once again, with Jack Hodson still leading this race. This time around, it is Alan Matthews with the purple sector on the lap. It has been Alan Matthews with a few purple sectors in this race so far, and that stands to reason. Best lap of the race so far, Alan Matthews at 2:10.6, Alan Matthews 2:11.5, Jack Hodson 2:12.3. So it just goes to show how defensive Jack Hodson's had to be throughout this entire race so far. On that last lap, a 2:12.2, so Jack Hodson's best so far. On that last lap for Alan Matthews, a 2:10.6, which is the new best lap of the race. But it is Alan Matthews with that great run through the final corner. The last lap now sees him up into P1 there. A fantastic move as Alan Matthews tries to secure heading through turn 1, but now we're going to be 3 wide on exit because it was slightly compromised for both Alan Matthews and Jack Hodson. Matt Daly had a clear run of things going slightly wide on entry, and now we have Matt Daly in the lead of this race. This is all change here in this battle. 15 minutes ago in this race, it has been non-stop action. Matt Daly finds himself in the lead by 0.8 of a second. Alan Matthews has 0.3 separating him and Jack Hodson, but I suspect the order's going to change once again. This has been brilliant stuff, but could this have been the move that Matt Daly's been waiting to perform after that surprise change in fortunes earlier on in the race? Now it is Matt Daly in the lead by 1.7 seconds as Alan Matthews had an issue. Alan Matthews has had an issue. That is so unfortunate for the red, white and green liveried car there. Put on an amazing performance, some fantastic battling. Unfortunately, it's been another stop. The car does not look as damaged as it did in race 1, but that is Alan Matthews out of contention here in this battle. What a shame, what a way to end what has been a brilliant bit of action from our guys fighting out at front of this field so far. Still only 1 second separating Matt Daly and Jack Hodson. 1.1 seconds make that now, because that was an impressive sector 1 from Matt Daly last time around. But that gap now building ever so slightly as Matt Daly continues on this momentum. That last lap for our drivers then, it's going to be a little bit worse for Alan Matthews when he crosses the line, but Matt Daly was a 2:10.2, the new fastest lap of this race so far. For Jack Hodson, a 2:12.3, so the momentum slightly swinging now towards Matt Daly's favour. 2:23 there for Alan Matthews, an unfortunate incident for him, although he is breaking away now from Steve Knight. Not the way he wanted his race to go, I am sure. 3.3 seconds now, the delta between our two front runners here, and Matt Daly has been rather unleashed, it must be said. Purple Sector 1, Purple Sector 2, 2-minute 10.2 on this last lap, and I suspect it's only be getting better. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner of your screens, ladies and gentlemen, you can see a predicted lap time. It's a 2:09.2 on this lap, make that 2:09.1. The time's getting better as he looks stronger through the lap. Meanwhile, Jack Hodson is currently on for around about a 2-minute 12 lap, I believe, 2-minute 11 perhaps. So the momentum swinging into Matt Daly's favour as we head towards the end of lap number 5. And Matt Daly dives into the pits. Why is this? Not entirely sure why. This is very unexpected. A penalty to serve potentially. Not quite sure what's going on. Perhaps forgetting to refuel the car, although he should be in race trim after race 1, so not sure what's gone on there. Terrible shame either way to see what has been an impressive amount of form becoming his way. It looks like a drive-through penalty of some description. Either way, he now exits the pit. He's going to be down in P3 in a moment if he's not careful. He should get underway actually. Back into P2 for Matt Daly. Let's see, as now we're going to have another battle, I suspect, between Alan Matthews, potentially Alan Matthews, but Matt Daly and Jack Hodson as well. That was looking to be a really strong lap, that from Matt Daly, actually, so it's a shame that it didn't come to fruition in the end. But we'll just have to see what pace he's got beneath him in just a moment. He hasn't got a new fresh set of tyres on because he wasn't stopped at any point for that, really, so he has made no changes to the car. let's just see what he can do against Jack Hodson now as he tries to hunt him down in the final 10 minutes of this race. Now, the difference between Jack Hodson and Alan Matthews, 2 minute 10.8, 2 minute 11.8 for Jack Hodson, so there's a second between those two drivers, and then Matt Daly is about a second faster yet again. So, we should be seeing Matt Daly breaking away from Alan Matthews at a decent pace, unless Alan Matthews can put in a strong lap here. But we should also be seeing Matt Daly being able to catch up to Jack Hodson quite quickly. We've got 10 minutes left, and we're looking at about at least a second a lap. Now, we're not going to have 7 laps left in this race. We're going to have probably about 4 or 5. About 4 or 5 laps to go in this race, maybe 6 if we're lucky. It could be late on in the race, it could be anyone's guess, really. It all depends on what Jack Hodson is able to do, what Matt Daly and Alan Matthews can do as well. Purple sector through sector 2 though for Matt Daly, so he's clearly showing his force here as he tries to close up to Jack Hodson in the final 10 minutes of this race. An impressive final sector for Matt Daly as well, 2 minute 10.0, his best lap to try and beat, and I suspect if he was able to stitch it a sector 1 from that lap, which we're going to see now actually, that would have been his best lap so far. But his delta's looking good, only 5 seconds now separating Matt Daly and Jack Hodson. He has broken away from Alan Matthews, the back end on his car squirming out a little bit, so we're going to go on board with him in a moment to try and get a bit of an onboard view of Matt Daly once again. Let's see what this lap is looking like. It's purple sector 1 so far, so it's looking good. But we have that drop down the hill once again as we get ready to run towards turn 12. Running now through turn 12, turn 13, the gap between Matt Daly and Jack Hodson, 4 seconds, losing out through sector 2 actually. Matt Daly, I suspect the tyres have hit that crucial point in the race. Usually we see the start of the race, the tyres on upper temperature and the fuel load's very heavy. You're not going to get the quickest laps. Fuel load begins to decrease as the tyres are still healthy and the lap times improve as the tyres are up temperature and they're healthy, as I say. Then we start to see the time begin to creep up as there's still a decent amount of fuel in the car, but the tyres are no longer at their best. Before, what we get is the fuel load being very light and the tyres have just about got some life left in it and the drivers can push. And that's when we see a decent lap time from the drivers. Before, we start to fall off a cliff there. Now we lost out through sector 2, which is all in the straights to be fair, so I suspect maybe a bit of slipstream coming into effect there, as we have sector 1 and sector 3 looking very strong from Matt Daly there, his best lap of the race so far, the first lap of this race to go sub 2 minute 10. It was a 2:09.2 as we have Matt Daly closing up on Jack Hodson with 7 minutes to go in this race. So we're going to say about 4 laps to go, let's say, of racing action. 2 minute 12.1 for Jack Hodson on that last lap, 2 minute 9.2. That's probably going to creep into the 2:10s for Matt Daly. I think a couple of laps before the end, we are going to have a great battle once again for the lead of this race between Matt Daly and Jack Hodson. I'm very much looking forward to that. Alan Matthews at turn 6 and turn 7 actually has had a bit of an incident, gets back underway, but is going to be slowly falling into the grasp of Steve Knight, especially with that front wing damage. Look, we'd actually see the front wing moving around here at this point in the race. Once again, just like race 1, it's going to be a case of trying to nurse the car home for Alan Matthews as we go on board with our race leader. In fact, we're going to go on board with Matt Daly and have a look at what the car is looking like from inside the cockpit.